So yeah, there's still people pinging in, which is fabulous, who may miss the beginning of this. Just to let everybody know that we will be recording this session. So I think there's recording has started, so everybody should have the pop-up message. So this is being held during Walk to School month, and it's a very special Modeshift TravelWise webinar. I'd really like to extend a really warm welcome to all of our national and international speakers. I think this is fabulous. Some people are attending and speaking and it's nighttime. For some of the guests, it's really, really early in the morning. So for us, it's quite easy in the afternoon, you know, nice end of day thing. Anyway, I'm going to hand over to Stephen Edwards, who's the Chief Executive of Living Streets, who are co-hosting this with us. So, as they say, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Stephen.
Thanks very much, Janine, and kind of thank you to everyone for coming along as well. This is a kind of really great opportunity to hear about how kind of different organisations in different countries kind of look at the Walk to School, and it's a really timely time to do it as well, given it's International Walk to School Month. So I'm really excited about it. By way of introduction, I'm Stephen Edwards, and I'm Chief Executive of Living Streets, the UK charity for everyday walking. And we run the biggest Walk to School campaign in the UK. And my colleague, Catherine Holcroft, who leads that work, will be talking a little bit more about the work we do shortly. Living Streets was set up way back in 1929 as the Pedestrians Association. And we were originally a kind of campaigning organisation looking at how to make safer roads for everyone to walk on. And I think it was back in 2011 that we joined with children, parents and community leaders from 40 countries around the world to celebrate the very first International Walk to School Month. And it's brilliant that we're still celebrating that today. International Walk to School Month is really an opportunity for children, families and educators across the globe to celebrate the benefits of walking to school, the benefits to our physical health, our mental health, the benefits to our environment, and the benefits in creating safer streets for everyone to enjoy. And because of that, International Walk to School Month really encourages a more walkable world, one community at a time. Today, we're going to be hearing some of these communities and have some really fantastic speakers who are going to present some global perspectives on the Walk to School. We're going to hear from Catherine Holcroft, my colleague at Living Streets, who's going to talk about the work we're doing every day across the whole of the UK to reverse the decline in Walk to School rates. Then we're going to hear from Nancy Pullen-Seifert from the National Centre for Safe Routes to School, who helped organise today's webinar with Modeshift and Living Streets. And thank you to Nancy for her support. And she'll be introducing our international speakers and their presentations. And we've got some really kind of excellent speakers to present to you. And we've got Hong Bri from the AIP Foundation, who's going to be talking about an evidence-based approach to reduce speeds in school zones. And we've got Ashley Reed from the Seattle Department of Transportation, who will be talking about Seattle's award-winning approach to safety for school-age walkers and cyclists. And then finally, we have Berenice Perez Campos from IDTP Mexico, who's going to talk about Walk and Roll to School Day in Mexico and Costa Rica. As was said at the beginning, we're all operating in different time zones, so we're going to field questions after each presentation rather than at the end of the session, just in case presenters need to kind of have a break or kind of get ready for the start of the day, or indeed the end of the day, depending where they are. So if you have a question, pop it into the chat before the kind of speaker you're interested in, and I'll make sure that it's fielded during the conversation. And we've got the kind of the hands up feature as usual as well. Could everyone also please mute your kind of when they're listening to other presentations, and then we'll be able to enjoy them properly. So without further ado, first of all, I'm going to pass it over to Catherine Holcroft, Head of Major Projects at Living Streets. And Catherine's going to talk us through kind of the work we do at Living Streets every day to kind of ensure more children can walk to school. Catherine runs our Walk to School Outreach programme, which is our kind of major programme with the UK Department for Transport. So looking forward to hearing kind of what Catherine has to say. Catherine, over to you.
Thank you very much, Steve. So as Steve said, we're Living Streets. We're the UK charity for everyday walking. So for over 90 years, we've been a beacon for walking. In our early days, our campaigning led to the UK's first zebra crossing and speed limits as well. So 30-mile-per-hour speed limits are a result of the campaigning that we did. So now our campaigns and our local projects deliver real change to overcome barriers to walking, and our groundbreaking initiatives, such as the world's biggest walk to school campaign, encourage millions of people to walk more. So to give you a bit of background on walking to school in the UK, so a generation ago, about 70% of us walked to school, and that's dropped to around half now in England, Scotland and Wales, with 1 in 4 cars on the road at the morning peak being on the school run. So at the same time, we're seeing increases in air pollution, childhood inactivity and road danger. Now, 49% of primary age children in England didn't meet their physical activity guidelines in 2019, and over a third of primary school leavers are overweight or obese. 6,500 schools are in areas where fine particles exceed the World Health Organization's recommended limit for air pollution, and toxic air pollution is responsible for up to 15% of new childhood asthma cases. And children are disproportionately killed and seriously injured when they're on our streets. Now, the government has set a target of 55% of children walking to school in England by 2025. And we're working with the UK government, Scottish government and Welsh government to reverse the decline in walking to school, to help more families enjoy the health and happiness benefits that we know walking to school can bring. International Walk to School Month in October and Living Streets Walk to School Week in May provide key points in the year when we promote the benefits of walking to school and WOW, our Walk to School Challenge. So if we go to the next slide, please. WOW is our Walk to School Challenge. It's a reward scheme, and it sees children record how they get to school on our interactive WOW travel tracker. Those who travel actively to school are rewarded with monthly WOW badges. So while walk to school rates are in decline nationally, our WOW schools show a different story. So on average, walk to school rates increased by 23%, with a 30% reduction in cars at the school gates from the schools that are doing well. So I'd like to show you a short clip from our WOW video where pupils and teachers can tell you more, because I think they explain it really well. So Nick, if you wouldn't mind starting the video.
How we travel to school is important for our health, our safety and for the environment. This is why Living Streets created WOW, the year-round Walk to School Challenge, to encourage more and more children and families to walk to school. WOW is now enjoyed by thousands of schools across the UK.
WOW is a scheme where the children self-report every day how they've travelled to school.
And the children love that responsibility, and they really like to show that they come a healthy way.
Yeah, it's really easy to do because we have our interactive whiteboards.
You have loads of people's names and you have a little picture as well, so you click on yours and there would be options to like walk, park and stride bike.
If you travel to school in a sustainable and active way at least one day a week for a month, you are awarded a WOW badge. On average, WOW schools will see a 23% rise in children walking and a 30% reduction in the number of cars pulling up to the school gates.
So one of the main motivators, I think, for our children is the interactive whiteboard, how colourful Living Streets have made the travel tracker.
I don't stop the class, I don't stop teaching and learning to make sure it's done. The children have taken full ownership of that and they love the leadership responsibility of that.
They really want to walk now and they do enjoy doing it, and they're getting the parents in on it as well now.
One day I tell my daughter, okay, let's get into car and let's go to school. She said, no, I'll lose my badge and I lose my fitness.
It's just healthier for him, and it makes him more road aware. He knows now when he's walking to stop. He knows not to go out in front of cars.
My son's favourite part of school is probably pretending that the seagulls are pterodactyls and they're chasing them and we're on a big mad run. He does that every morning.
The WOW badges are the children's favourite thing. There are 11 to collect over the school year, and each badge features colourful designs created by children. All badges are made from recycled yoghurt pots which were destined for landfill.
Thank you very much. So as you can see, that's WOW. So WOW is available fully funded for some schools in England, and it can also be self-funded by schools. So they can use the PE and sport premium, and it costs around £2 per pupil for the full year. Okay, so the next slide then, please. So one of the ways in which WOW is funded is through a government grant for our Walk to School outreach programme. So Walk to School outreach currently sees over 1,000 schools taking part in WOW. Last year, we saw fantastic results with 2.5 million car kilometres taken off the road, a 26% shift in pupils' travel behaviour, and a 13.4 million figure of new walking trips. So it's proof that dedicated behaviour change programmes can increase and sustain walking rates. They can lead to considerable transport, environmental and health benefits. On to the next slide, please. So as well as encouraging more pupils to walk to school, Living Streets also works to enable more families to do so as well. There are barriers to walking to school that need addressing, and we know from our research that parents do want safer crossings. They want 20 miles per hour speed limits. They want school streets, and that's where streets are close to cars that drop off and pick up times around the school. And they also want a ban on pavement parking. So we work with schools and the local authorities to help address some of these and the infrastructure changes that are required as well. So it might be as simple as just setting up an official park and stride site. So that's where families can park 10 minutes away from the school gate and walk the rest of the way. This reduces traffic around the school gates and of course the fumes that linger long after the cars have left. Or we can carry out school route audits. So this is where we assess the local streets to see what improvements could be made, and then we make recommendations to the local authority to do so. We can also support the implementation of school streets, which sees traffic reduce immediately outside the school gates. So when we've got those in combination, WOW and school streets can have a really positive impact on road safety and air quality for a school community. We also campaign nationally to improve the walk to school. So our report, Swap the School Run for the School Walk, lays out 21 recommendations for decision makers at all levels to enable more children to walk to and from school. So you can find this report and more resources on our website, which is just livingstreets.org.uk/walk to school. Or if you go on to the last slide, my details are there and you can simply just get in touch. Okay, thank you very much. Anybody got any questions?
Fantastic. Thank you, Catherine. It was a really, really good overview of the work we're doing. You can really see the impact it's having. We've got a question from Emily, and Emily asks, does the government target of 55% of children walking to school by 2025 include secondary pupils or just primary?
So it's primary school pupils that we're targeting. So although we do look at the older age group of primary school as well, and we do talk to them about transitioning to secondary school, and the target that we're trying to achieve is based on primary schools at the moment.
Yeah. We also do work with nurseries as well, so we kind of cover the whole stuff. But yeah, that's right. The government target is just children 5 to 10.
Yeah, So we can offer things either side of that, but yeah, you're right, the government target is just the primary school age group. Does anybody else have any questions? I'm going to get off lightly.
Well, I might take Chair's prerogative and ask you a question myself, Catherine. What you talked a little bit about the work we do to kind of help improve the environments around schools as well. What do you see as the kind of the top 2 or 3 things that make a difference to the environment around schools to increasing walking rates?
Well, I think when you see less cars around the school gates, that automatically wants people want to drive more as well, because it just creates a much nicer environment. And we try to look for the nicer routes to school as well. So it's not always along the main roads. We try and find what we call cleaner, greener routes to school as well. So if we can find those and even have park and stride sites from those areas into school, it just creates that much nicer environment for the parents to want to walk with the children. And you know, we find it's good for the parents' mental health as well, quite often in the morning. So there's plenty of adult benefits that come alongside the benefits to the children.
Great, thanks. Any other questions for Catherine? Rob has a question. Rob said, where does the baseline of 55% come from? Is government directly engaged with schools to ascertain this figure?
Yeah, so research, you know, conducted. We have a national travel survey that's conducted, and that will usually tell how many pupils are walking to school, and it's that data that they use to see where the increases are happening. We also have our WOW travel tracker that we use that the children report on, so we can see the differences that's being made in our WOW schools. But then it's the national travel survey data that all schools use that gives the government its overall figure. Unfortunately, we don't work in every local authority in England to be able to reach all those schools. But certainly the schools that we're working in is having a huge difference to the walk to school rates.
Just to add to that, I think one thing us and our friends at Modeshift have been really clear on, and have been pushing government for over the last few years, has been the reinstallation of a kind of question in the school census that every school gets around a kind of mode of travel to school, just so we can get much richer data in addition to the national travel survey data that we have.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Catherine? Catherine McCoy asks, how can local authorities become part of the outreach programme, if at all?
It's quite a targeted approach. How local authorities come on board is quite often decided by the Department of Transport at the time, and now the Active Travel England. And we're just waiting for a little bit of a steer, a bit of guidance on them for any future projects, given what's going on in government at the moment and their new capability and ambition fund that they're telling local authorities about in England at the moment. So we're trying to help them meet their objectives, Active Travel England's objectives. And yeah, really, they give us a little bit of a steer. In the past, it's been quite large combined authorities that we've been targeting in urban areas. But who's to say that won't change in future? But yeah, it's generally more deprived areas that we've been targeted with approaching in the past. I don't think it's just a case of any local authority. Well, I know it's not just a case of any local authority approaching us, but certainly where a local authority is keen to work with us, we will try and find a way that can do so. But it won't always be through the outreach project, but we can deliver WOW through other projects as well.
So Catherine, do get in touch if you want to discuss further. Then Elizabeth says she totally agrees on the school census, and do we think that it'll come back to being compulsory any time soon? I think it'll take time, but it's certainly something we're pushing on. So fingers crossed, hopefully we'll get some change at some point. Any other questions? We've got time for one more question. No. Great. Well, there were some really good questions there. I'm now going to pass over to Nancy, who's going to introduce our kind of international speaker. Nancy's the director of the National Centre for Safe Routes to School, which is located at the University of North Carolina Highway Safety Research Centre, and coordinates Water School Day in the US. And she had also led the launch of the Vision Zero for Youth initiative in the US as well 7 years ago. So I can't think of anyone kind of better to introduce our international speakers and also talk a little bit about the work that she is doing as well. So over to you. Kind of excited, looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you so much, and hello everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. I really feel like this is a reunion of sorts. I was thinking back to some of my earliest work at the Highway Safety Research Center with the National Center for Safe Routes to School, and that was back in 2003. And I had the chance to be involved in the International Walk to School Committee, which was chaired by a UK road safety representative and brought together several different countries to talk about having an international event. Now, at that time, several countries were celebrating Walk to School Day, but back in 2000 was when it really became international. And then we had this wonderful committee that gave a lot of thought to how we can be strategic and also learn from each other. So it really is such a joy to be back together again in a bit of a way today. I want to say thank you to Catherine for really doing such a beautiful job of setting the stage. And also special thank you to Modeshift for reaching out and to really taking the lead in organizing the webinar today. My goal really is to just give you a brief update on Walk to School Day in the US, and then tell you a little bit more about Vision Zero for Youth, and very briefly our forthcoming speakers, because mostly my job is to get out of the way so that you can hear from them. Next slide, Nick, please. So first, a little bit more about Walk to School Day in the US, and really for us, and I think Catherine spoke to this so beautifully too, this really is a joyful topic as well as being a serious one. With Walk to School Day in the US, we really see both. We see communities that use the event to highlight the benefits of walking and the fun of being together outside. We have other communities that use it to bring attention to urgent safety needs for places that need improvements so that more students can walk and that they can do so safely. In the United States, we celebrated what we now call Walk and Roll to School Day last week. So schools and communities celebrate throughout the month, but we do have a focus day, which this year was on October 12th. This year, we rebranded our event to include Roll to School, so Walk and Roll to School Day, to be more inclusive of all the ways that students might get to school. So including using assistive mobility devices like a wheelchair, or it might be using a scooter or a skateboard. We have been celebrating Walk and Roll to School Day since 1997 in the US, so this was our 26th year. Very exciting. This year we had more than 2,500 events who have registered their participation on the website. We typically get registration throughout the month of October, and we really see representation from across the country. It's been very interesting for us to watch this regrowth after the pandemic. Certainly, like all other parts of the world, we had students who were staying at home and not doing that typical school commute. We have always seen this event really as a tool for supporting safe walking and biking every day. So it is so much more than just the event. Last year in our post-event survey of local organizers that we conduct every year, we found that 65% of events led to policy or engineering changes. So the kinds of changes that we need to have in order to really support daily walking and biking to school. Next slide, please. So supporting daily walking and biking on this next slide, as the National Center for Safe Routes to School, really led us to launch our Vision Zero for Youth initiative, recognizing that young people need to be able to walk and bike to several different kinds of locations and destinations, not just the trip to school. And we also wanted to encourage cities to prioritize all of those places for safety improvements. So any place where kids need to walk and bike. We also recognized that globally, motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death for people ages 5 to 29. So we know it was a critical need to address. Next slide, please. So with funding support from the FIA Foundation, we've done a good deal of work on our Vision Zero for Youth initiative, including the development of an award program called our Vision Zero for Youth Leadership Award to recognize places that are taking bold steps to prevent crashes and encourage active travel for young people. The intention behind the award really is twofold. It's both to support that particular city's continued momentum and to serve as an inspirational example for other cities to follow. So we have both an international and a US award. I'm so pleased you'll hear from representatives from both of our 2022 award recipients, Pleiku City and Yalai Province in Vietnam, and Seattle, Washington in the United States, two very different contexts, but both places that are innovating and who have staff and elected official commitment to making streets safer and more inviting for kids. You will also have hear from a final speaker today who is a dear colleague at ITDP Mexico City, where they have also been taking the Vision Zero for Youth concept and Walk to School Day and done really a tremendous amount of work to engage communities and community leaders in advancing walking and biking. Next slide. So I also just wanted to include a brief slide here so that it's also part of the recording. I included a few of our websites where you can find more information, and of course my contact information is here as well. With that, I want to turn it over to our first international speaker, which is Hong Bui with AIP Foundation. And AIP Foundation has really been a critical partner in Vietnam, pushing for changes to streets and policies that impact safe travel for kids. If each of our speakers, before you start, if you would just give a brief moment to introduce yourselves and be sure that that those of us in the audience know sort of a little bit about your background, that would be a wonderful gift. So on that, Hong, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Yeah, many thanks, Nancy. So hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you all today. My name is Hong Bui, and I currently serve as the program manager for AIP Foundation. I'll be sharing today one of our projects in Vietnam, which utilize a comprehensive framework of the intervention to advocate for safe school zones. Next slide, please. AIP Foundation is a non-profit organization that's been working since 1999 to prevent the growth, fatalities, and injuries in low and middle income countries across the Asia Pacific. We currently work in Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, India, and Philippines through the road safety initiative that focus on promoting education, awareness, policy advocacy across the communities we serve. And our overall mission, of course, is to ensure that all individuals, including those in the low and middle income countries, have access to safe, sustainable mobility. Next, please. I'm sure you are all familiar with these statistics, but I always include them to help frame the context we're working. It's important to note that the individuals are the most at risk include children and young adults, pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists, and the road user living in the low and middle income countries. Next, please. Vietnam is currently the fifth fastest growing country in the world, and of its population of 96 million people with almost 25,000 road traffic fatalities and 500,000 road injuries. Next, please. This is a photo taken as one of our project schools in the central Vietnam, and I think it perfectly captures the dangers that youth in many parts of the country face in their daily journey to school. Unfortunately, Vietnam does not have clearly defined regulation on school zone requirements. And so, as a result, many schools lack basic infrastructure such as speed limit signs, sidewalks, and crosswalks. And this is one of many reasons why in Vietnam, road crashes account for the second highest number of deaths for children aged 5 to 14. Next, please. While there are many factors which contribute to why road crashes may occur in school zones, speeding is perhaps one of the biggest factors today. And in Vietnam, about 10% of road crashes are caused by speeding. And a survey of Vietnam drivers found that 64% of Vietnamese drivers felt it was understandable to ride at speeds above the legal speed limit. Next slide, please. And just Nancy just mentioned about the slow zone, safe zone. Since 2018, we have implemented our slow zone, safe zone program in Gia Lai province, the Central Highland of Vietnam. And the program was launched in collaboration with the coalition of public, private, and non-profit stakeholders, including Vietnam National Traffic Safety Committee, the Ministry of Education and Training, the local provincial agencies, GSP, the FIA, and all the private sector stakeholders would aim to reduce road crash injuries and fatalities in school zone. Next slide, please. Yeah, next, please. The Slow Zone Safe Zone program uses a multi-branch approach that includes the construction of the tailored school zone modifications, public awareness campaigns, law enforcement initiatives, legislative advocacy, and the development of a traffic safety e-curriculum. Next, please. We are aligned with the safe system approach in regards to the important role that all stakeholders play in creating a reinforcing growth safety environment. And that is why our project activities targeted various groups. This includes more than 25,000 students, 900 teachers, 50,000 parents, and over 200 community members, and 50 representatives from various government agencies. Next, please. The first phase of the initiative began with 2 schools in 2018, and the photo you see here were taken at a project site prior to our program interventions. As you can see, there was little to no safe pedestrian infrastructure, including separate sidewalks, school zone signage, speed bumps, or crosswalk for students to safely cross the road. An assessment we conduct with the Arab Studying for School application. For that, this school received 2 out of 5 stars when measured for safety. In addition to the infrastructural challenges, at the time we took the photo, there was no regard in Vietnam national law to lower speed limit for schools located along the provincial highway. What we found during our pre-intervention assessment was that vehicles, including large trucks, would travel well beyond the speed limit at around 60 and even 70 kilometers per hour. Next, please. We did collaborate with the local government to conduct a multi-step process in order to assess and implement the infrastructure upgrades at our target school. Next, please. The photo you see here is the same project school from earlier after the infrastructure modification was installed. We focus on the key components of the safe school zone model, including raised crosswalks, rainbow strips, traffic lights, road markings, speed reduction, school zone sign, and new sidewalks. And the most important intervention that have reached 5-star in our target school is reduce speed from legally 50 and 60 km/h to 30 and 40 km/h during arrival and dismissal times. And the post-assessment conducted with the star rating for school application found that this school is now qualified as a 5-star school. Next slide, please. Beyond reducing speed limit through the infrastructure upgrades, we also work to ensure that the public were equipped with the sufficient knowledge to better understand the importance of reducing speed and to inform target community of these changes throughout the province. We work with the provincial government and media agencies to develop a communication campaign via Facebook, the national radio channel, and the provincial television channel. Next, please. Yeah, next slide, please. And in parallel with our public awareness campaign was a police enforcement plan in order to inform local residents of new speed limits and reinforce behavior changes. The local police carry out an enforcement campaign for reduced speed limit of 30 and 40 km/h at target schools, and the enforcement activity combined with the public awareness campaign, this improved road users' behavior on speed reduction when passing school zone. Next, please. I wanted to highlight some key results after 2 years of piloting. Firstly, what we can find was that after the modification were installed and the speed enforcement campaign ended, there was a significant improvement in community knowledge about the legal speed limit at the target schools, where the percentage of the people who could correctly identify the current speed increased from 16% to 66%, and the maximum speed reduced by 21 km/h, and also the average speed in school zone fell under 40 km/h. As I have previously shared, all project schools achieved 5-star rating after school modification. Next slide, please. In 2020, based on the result from the slow zone safe zone, the Gia Lai provincial government issued a legal document lowering speed around the school zone and calling for Pleiku City to allocate funds from the city budget to install the road modification in school zone. And as you know, in Vietnam, before 2018, we have no any speed limit for school zone, and with slow zone safe zone, we did that, and the legal document represent a landmark step towards defining and securing safer school zone throughout Vietnam, demonstrating the government's commitment to protect children on the roads. Next, please. Next, please. And based on the experience gained from the first phase of the slow zone safe zone, the first phase took place from 2018 to 2020, and the second phase continued from 2020 to 2022. AIP Foundation continue working with the Yala provincial government and other relevant stakeholders to cover the remaining 29 primary schools in Pleiku City through phase 2 of the slow zone safe zone. Also, based on assessment of the star rating for school, 23 schools out of 31 schools were upgraded to 5 stars, a highest ranking regarding safety with the star rating for school. And among self-reported students involved road crashes, the rate of the crashes near target school decreased from around 20% to 3%. Next slide, please. Yeah, next, please. Next slide, please.
Hi, Hong. Just letting you know the slides are being advanced, but I think we're experiencing some delays with the timings. It is on the slide you're asking for. I'm not sure if it's updated yet.
Yeah, so on the next slide, the slide 17.
We're on
18.
Pleiku definition at the moment. Is that the one you wanted?
Okay, so yeah. So finally, the finding resulted in the legal document issued by the Pleiku Bisbal Committee to pass in the first school zone definition for Pleiku City. This school zone definition will apply to new and existing schools undergoing modification in the city, providing better protection for students commuting to and from the school. And the last slide, please. Build.
Hi, Hong. I think we can see the slide, but you can't. So would you like to just carry on talking?
Yes,
Thanks.
and building upon the success of the slow zone safe zone, the Ministry of Transport and AIP Foundation signed a partnership framework for the Safe School Zone Guide to safeguard every child on their journey to and from school in Vietnam. And the Safe School Zone Guide was developed to reduce the injury and fatality in and around all school zone by improving road condition and setting legal speed limit across the whole country. This guide has been approved recently by the Ministry of Transport. And in addition, under the slow zone safe zone, the traffic safety e-curriculum was developed to provide an effective and creative student-centered educational tool for primary students to learn the essential traffic safety skills from the young age. It had been approved as well by the Ministry of Education and Training to be used as an official school material in primary school system nationwide. And this is the first nationwide traffic safety e-curriculum for primary students in Vietnam. And from now on, whichever mode of the transport the student choose, they will learn to be safer. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Hong. That's fantastic. So we're slightly overrunning on time. Does anybody have a question for Hong?
If we have a moment for a question, I hope I could take liberty to ask one of Hong, which is, the kinds of changes that have happened in Vietnam require a lot of political support at different levels. Do you have any particular advice about getting that kind of support?
Yeah, you're right. This is a significant changes in the policy, and in order to do so, we from the beginning of the proposal stage, we got them involved. So we got them involved and get their commitment from very beginning, and they also with us from the beginning to the end. That's why we receive great support from the national and the local government as well. Very important to get them involved very big at the beginning.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was really, really great. And it's really good to see such fantastic results coming through as well. Thanks for that kind of really interesting presentation. Nancy, do you want to introduce our next international speaker at this point?
Yes, thank you. So our next speaker today, you're going to hear from Ashley Reed. She is with the Seattle Department of Transportation. She will be talking about the City of Seattle's approach to safe routes to school and protecting young pedestrians. I can also just say, you know, the award committee was really particularly impressed with some of the work that the city has done to slow speeds throughout the city, and then to also specifically focus on areas around schools, and also really thinking about equity. So where are those changes most needed? So Ashley, with that, I'd like to turn it over to you. And Ashley, can you just tell our listeners what your position title is as well?
Yeah, thanks so much, Nancy. So I am the Safe Routes to School Program Manager at the Seattle Department of Transportation. I've been with the Department of Transportation for almost 10 years now. And prior to that, had got degrees in urban and regional planning. So you can go to the next slide, please. There's been a little bit of a delay. Yeah, so as Nancy mentioned, Seattle is the 2022 U.S. Vision Zero for Youth Leadership Award winner. This is a photo of our walk and roll to school day last week on the 12th with the mayor and the school superintendent and the director of the Department of Transportation. So we got to walk to school with our school leaders, which was really a tremendously heartwarming experience to see the kids in our community, seeing their leaders showing up for them and supporting them. So today I'll give you a brief overview of the Safe Routes to School program, talk about our racial equity focus, our safe systems approach, how we reduced speed limits citywide, some of our People Streets programs, the Let's Go Walking and Biking Safety Training program that's in all schools, and also how we support walking to school more generally. Next slide, please. So what is Safe Routes to School? Safe Routes to School is a U.S. movement to increase safe walking and biking to school. It's at the national level, it's at the state level, and it's also at the municipal level. In Seattle, the Safe Routes to School program is housed within the Department of Transportation. We have a 5-year action plan with about 50 actions across 7 E's. Our E's are equity, environment, engineering, education, empowerment, encouragement, and evaluation. And our program is committed to the the City of Seattle's equity, safety, and climate change goals. So our equity goal is to eliminate racial disparities and achieve racial equity. Our Vision Zero goal is to end traffic deaths and serious injuries on city streets by 2030. And our climate change goal is that 90% of personal trips are zero emission, and this includes trips to school. Next slide, please. I'll just keep talking in the interest of time. So As Nancy mentioned, our Safe Routes to School program takes a racial equity, has a racial equity focus on how we deliver our program. Between 2017 and 2019, we conducted a 2-year racial equity analysis on the program, and that involved engaging thousands of residents at community events, at schools, we held focus groups at schools and at organizations. We also did a citywide survey that was mailed to all households with school-age children, and we also translated it and brought it along with interpreters to school events and community events. And we took what we learned from that and we updated our action plan. So the action plan I just mentioned is actually our second 5-year action plan. Next slide, please. So in general, at the Seattle Department of Transportation, we take a safe systems approach to our Vision Zero program, acknowledging that speed is the critical factor in crash severity. So a person hit by a vehicle traveling at 20 miles an hour is very likely to survive. A person hit by a vehicle traveling at 40 miles per hour is not likely to survive. And that is really critical in the context of children and humans in general. Our bodies are vulnerable. We're soft, fleshy things, and we make mistakes. And children will continue to always make mistakes. There's no amount of educating that we can do to educate them out of making mistakes. That's part of being a child. And so the adults in our society need to take on that extra responsibility. One of the other sort of principles of safe systems is that responsibility is shared between engineers, transportation planners, the traveling public, but it's not shared equally with children. So the adults in our society need to take on that extra responsibility for making sure that kids are safe. In Seattle, we have about 4 serious injury crashes per year with children under age 18 walking and biking. We have not, knock on wood, not had any fatalities since 2014. And when we look at the crash data, we see that almost all of them are on arterial streets. So these are the busier streets that carry more traffic, have higher speeds, sometimes are multi-lane. About half of those crashes happen in the most disadvantaged areas of the city. Again, why looking at equity is very important. About a quarter of them happen in a school crosswalk, but only one of them happen in a school crosswalk on a school day. So if we're looking at safety for children, we really need to be acknowledging that kids are everywhere, and that all streets need to be safe at all times. It's not sufficient to only be focusing in school zones at arrival and dismissal times of day. Because kids are everywhere in our streets, and they have a right to be traveling around on our city streets to be going to different destinations. Next slide, please. So for that reason, we have engaged in a citywide speed limit reduction effort. So nearly all of our arterial streets are now signed at 25 miles per hour, which is about 40 kilometers per hour. And I think it's not kph, it might be kmh or something. When we did that program, we also installed speed limit signs at more frequent intervals throughout the corridors, really placing them in strategic locations to make sure that when people entered a corridor, they could see very visibly what the speed limit is, and then have reminders throughout the corridor of what the speed limit is. This is a really cost-effective way of improving safety citywide. We know that it does, in many contexts, it does make a difference, and we do see an actual speed reduction. But it doesn't, it's not effective in all contexts, especially where there's multiple lanes in each direction. So we have redesigned many corridors for safer speeds throughout the city, and we are continuing that work. Often that means removing a vehicle lane. We call it a road diet, or a 4 to to 3 lane conversion, where you have, instead of having 2 lanes in each direction, you have 1 lane in each direction with the center turn lane and bicycle lanes on either side of the street. We find that when there's 1 lane in each direction, that's when we really start to see the speed reductions, because you can only go as fast as the person driving in front of you. In school zones, we also install 20-mile-an-hour flashing beacons. So these lights flash when the 20-mile-an-hour school zone speed limit is in effect. And we also install speed humps in our school zones. So we do have some limitations around where we can do that, especially in regards to frequent transit routes and routes that are heavily used by emergency services. But that's one of the other really important tools that we find is very effective. Next slide, please. So in addition to looking at arterials citywide, we also, during the pandemic, started a new program called Healthy Streets. And this is a map that shows the healthy streets across the city. The purple lines are the healthy streets, and the green lines are the neighborhood greenways. So neighborhood greenways are a type of facility that we've been developing and installing for about 10 years now. And they're streets that prioritize people walking and biking. These are neighborhood, residential, quieter streets. And during the pandemic, we converted a lot of those to healthy streets, which really limited the amount of vehicles on the street. And they're really long routes. They're many, many miles long. So, during the pandemic, when we found that we needed to have 6 feet of space in between people, we realized that our 6-foot wide sidewalks were not providing that adequate space. So we closed down roads to through traffic and opened them up, basically made it legal for people to walk and bike in the street. In the US, unless the street is closed, it's not legal to walk in the street. So our healthy streets flipped that on its head, made drivers the guest, and made the space designated for walking and biking and playing. And they are not vehicle-free streets. So they're still open to local residents to access their homes. Deliveries can be delivered, garbage pickup, emergency services, all of that can still access the street. Next slide, please. And excuse me, in many cases, because these were the neighborhood greenway routes, which when we plan neighborhood greenways, we go through a multi-year long, multi-year long process of excuse me, of planning the route. And so they connect to libraries and schools and parks and different destinations that people want to reach on foot or on bike. And so many of these connect to schools. So we see children walking and biking on these routes to school, especially young children biking. So it's much more comfortable to be biking on the street, on a healthy street where there's very few people sharing the street in cars with your young kids. So the program is under review right now. The mayor has made a commitment to make 20 miles permanent. And you can see a tiny little orange spot in the north of the city. One small section has been made permanent. There's another section connected to that that's under construction. All the rest of the Stay Healthy, or of the healthy streets, are under review to be made permanent, and at least 20 miles will be. And this is a photo that shows what they look like when they're permanent. So we're taking away sort of temporary barricades and putting in more permanent features. Next slide. So in addition to the healthy streets, we also started a school streets program, like many other places around the world. So, and these were modeled off of our Healthy Streets program. So this is, in this case, it's 1 or 2 blocks adjacent to a school that's close to through traffic. It's also close to parents in cars. So it's open to families walking and biking. Students arriving in district transportation are still allowed to access the street. Typically that's students with disabilities on a school bus. That's also homeless students and students in foster care. But outside of that, there's very, very little traffic on the street. We're starting this fall to engage with one school to evaluate making their school street permanent, and that will sort of create a model for us to do that around the rest of the city. We have about 12 schools out of around 100 that are participating in our School Streets program, and we've added new schools every school year since the program started. Next slide, please. So the next thing I'll talk about is Let's Go, which is our walking and biking safety education program. And this is a program that we fund that's run through the public school system. So it provides 3 weeks of walking and biking safety training in the physical education classes. We reach every 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade student in public school every year. So they get 6 consecutive years of this education. Each year is building on the last and reinforcing what they've learned. We're including children with disabilities. We have a really wonderful nonprofit in Seattle called Outdoors for All that provides the adaptive bicycles, and we have an adaptive curriculum so that all children can participate in the program. We're also working on installing traffic gardens on all school playgrounds. So these are sort of, in case you haven't heard of a traffic garden, it's basically like a mini street that is kid size that kids can practice their skills on, where there's intersections, there's stop signs, there's crosswalks. So kids will be able to, when they are doing the Let's Go program, they'll be able to do that on the traffic garden, but they'll be permanently installed. So all year round, kids can bike to school, they can practice and play on the traffic garden, you know, after school, weekends, etc. There'll be community amenities. In general, our playgrounds are open to the public outside of school hours. Next slide. So just the last thing I'll mention is that because the Safe Routes to School program is housed in the Department of Transportation in Seattle, which is not the case everywhere in the U.S., the primary focus of our program is on infrastructure improvements. We're, as the Department of Transportation, we own and operate the public right-of-way. We're the only entity that can make those improvements, so that's kind of the biggest emphasis of our program. But we do provide, as I mentioned, you know, we do work across the rest of the E's, including empowerment and encouragement and education, etc. So we do support the programming side of walking to school. The biggest way that we do that is through our mini grant program. We provide up to $1,000 to schools and community groups for activities that support safe walking and biking to school. And this is a really popular program that we've had for a long time. Pretty much anyone who applies gets the grant if it's something that we can legally fund. So that often is walk to school campaigns, walking school buses, student safety patrol, pedestrian crossing flags. We've also expanded it. Well, I should say we'll fund pretty much anything, any idea people have, but we do put specific ideas out there just to give people ideas of what they could be doing and applying for. And so we've added books with walking themes. We have a PDF that people can download with a bunch of suggested books across different grade levels. So schools can buy the books just for their school library, or they can hand them out to students to take home and own. Unfortunately, there are lots of families that don't have any books at home. So if we can get books with walking and biking themes in them in kids' homes where they're reading them regularly, we can be doing that subliminal messaging and get them hooked at a young age. We also fund outdoor clothing. So this is something that we learned in our racial equity analysis that is really important for families of color, that they may be walking to school already, they may be interested in walking to school, they may not have access to appropriate clothing for Seattle weathers, which are not too cold, but are quite wet. We often have, 50 degrees or 40 degrees and sideways rain. So we can fund outdoor clothing so that kids get to school more comfortably in our weather. And that has really taken off since we've started promoting that as a use of the grant. We have a lot of schools applying for that. We also have a Safe Routes to School beginner's guide, school walk maps. We provide free incentives like stickers, hand stamps, temporary tattoos, etc. And we have a really fun activity book, sort of activity book coloring book. We have one for younger kids and we have one for teenagers and young adults. We also will do sort of one-off contracts with community groups to start walking school buses. This photo is of a walking school bus in for an elementary school that's kind of in the center city. That's been a really successful program. They have a bunch of routes. And we also, so since we're part of this Department of Transportation, we have more funding for Safe Routes to School than some of the other partners in Seattle who are involved in Safe Routes to School. So we actually fund a Safe Routes to School coordinator position that's housed at the public school. And that person was hired this past spring. So they're kind of working on developing their program. But the focus of that role is to support all schools in the fall and in the spring during Walk to School Month and Bike to School Month, but then to really focus in on just a handful of schools to get more sustainable walking to school programs up and running, like walking school buses, connecting those schools. They're higher priority schools, so connecting those schools with outdoor clothing and other sorts of resources that they need in order to be able to walk regularly and not just as, you know, a one-off sort of one day a year, one day a week kind of thing. And I see that there was one question. The grant is $1,000, but it's $1,000 per applicant. And so we often will have the PTA, the Parent Teacher Association, apply, and then also the school itself can apply. So that could be 2 applicants sort of serving one school. And once they close out a grant, then they can have another one. And we also provide the funds up front. It's not on a reimbursement basis because schools and PTAs, well, the ones that we really want to be engaging with and serving likely don't have the funds up front to work on a reimbursement basis. And that's the end of my presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Ashley. I've just got one quick question from the chat that we hadn't covered, which I'll combine with a question I had. We've in the UK done a lot of work over the last couple of years introducing school streets and something we call low traffic neighbourhoods, which are quite similar to your healthy streets approach. We find that the low traffic neighbourhoods are far more difficult to introduce than school streets, and they have kind of in many places been removed afterwards. What's your experience been in Seattle?
Yeah, I think I think that it's probably the same here. There's really broad support for school streets. You know, it's a street that's right in front of the school. It's kind of hard to argue against that. The long routes, the healthy streets, long routes, they can be more challenging. You know, there's some people who really like them, some people who don't like them as much. Some like parts of a route might be trickier than others. So I think that it's not likely that all of our healthy streets will remain. I think that some of them will be decommissioned, but we will keep at least 20 miles. And I think likely more than that. In general, they have, like, overall citywide, they have been really popular. I think they sort of give people what they want, which is that the only person who's allowed to drive on their street is them. You know, we hear complaints all the time from people that there's too many people driving in their street. They want, you know, lower speeds, lower traffic, and that's exactly what a healthy street provides. But they, as a resident, are still allowed to drive on their street. So unfortunately, some of the things that we've heard against them are that it brings people in walking and biking on their street from outside the neighborhood. And so there's some of that kind of, we don't want people we don't know walking in front of our street or walking in front of our home. But that is a small minority, I think.
Great, thanks, Ashley. That was really interesting. I'm now going to ask Nancy to introduce Berenice, our final speaker. Nancy.
Yes. So our final speaker today to round things out, and I'm just so glad, is Berenice Perez with ITDP. And Berenice, when you start, will you just tell us a little bit more about your particular role at ITDP so folks have a sense of kind of what your perspective is that you're bringing? And I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for the invitation. Hi, everyone. My name is Berenice Perez. I am the Street Design and Active Mobility Coordinator from ITDP. In this case, I am the coordinator of Walk to Road to School Day. So yes, this is my first year with this project, but I am very, very happy for the things that we are accomplished. So yes, thank you. So in this case, I am going to talk about Vision Zero for youth, specifically about Walk and Road to School Day. So this event is in Mexico and also in Costa Rica. So the next, please. Thank you. But first, what is ITDP? ITDP is a global non-profit organization that promotes the active mobility as well as bike, obviously, and we are leaders on public transport and transit-oriented development. We have 7 offices around the world. For example, in Brazil, China, Indonesia, Mexico, and others. In Mexico, we have been working for more than 50 years with the government to improve urban mobility. The next, please. Thank you. Now, let's talk about Vision Zero. And the next, please. Yes, thank you. How road safety in Mexican streets? Road security is a public health problem. Mexico is ranked in the 16th position worldwide and the second in Latin America. As a country with more deaths caused by traffic accidents, every year nearly 60,000 people die as a result of traffic accident and more than 100,000 get injured. It's also an equity problem because of the impact on the vulnerable groups. Traffic accidents are one of the 10 main causes of death in Mexico and the second cause in children death between 5 and 9 years and teenagers for 10 and 19 years. Finally, it's an urban problem because the 70% of deaths occur in urban areas. The next, please. Thank you. For this reason, since 2017, we have been working in the implementation of Vision Zero for youth, which is this is integral public policy, that has this goal about a right to zero deaths and injuries caused by traffic. We are looking to make this happen by using these 4 pillars, that is management of road safety, street design, regulation and application of the law, and also mobility culture. The next, please. Thank you. In this vision, we have Walk and Road to School Day. The next. Walk and Road to School Day, is a year event that is celebrated on October. This goal is to make visible the need to have safety and healthy school environments for children. More than 40 countries carry out this practice. The next, please. So in the next slide, we have this timeline with some celebrations since October 2018. So we are working with Mexico City, Hermosillo, Sonora, San Pedro Garza Garcia in Nuevo León State, Puebla de Zaragoza in Puebla, also with Costa Rica. We were the last year with Costa Rica, and this event was very, very important for us because in this event participate around that 1918 schools. Was very cool because the children make some models and some activities in his schools. So yes, we had a good result with this participation. Also in October 20 and 21, participate San Andrés Cholula and San Nicolás de los Garza and also Monterrey. The next, please. Thank you. One of the first celebrations that we had was in Mexico City in October 2018. And was the first. In this event, participate 5 schools of 3 different municipalities, as Coyoacán, Cuauhtémoc, and Iztacalco. In this school, on this event, the school community welcomes not only children, also parents and professors. The next, please. So in the other slide, we have another event that occurred in Puebla in 2019. And with this, in this event participate BINE, that is a school that has around 9,000 students, no, in all levels. But in this case, only participate 300 students, and the journey was made by walking and biking. The next, please. And one of the last celebrations happened in San Nicolás de los Garza and Monterrey in Nuevo León State. In this event, participate 2 schools in each municipality, and in this case, we work with civil society organizations like MOVAC and Pueblo Bicicletero, that they were champions. And in this event also participate the mayors, no? The mayors walk with the children and listen to their voices. The next, please. So now, but who can organize the event? Everybody that wants to improve the school zones with pedestrian and less traffic accidents, for example, public sector, private sector, civil society organizations, and in community in general. We work with all of them. So the next, please. Thank you. What are the steps to organize a Welcome Road to School Day in Mexico? First, you need to plan the activity. You need to define the goal and decide what kind of activity you want to do. For example, walk or roll or boat. Then you need to contact a school director and show it to them. And in group decide activity groups, level, and professors that could be involved in the celebration. And also you need to decide the schedule of the event. But one of the things more important in this process is that you need to work with the community school. No, it's important to communicate the goal and the activity and all the process and the importance of this day. The next, please. Thank you. It's important to say that we don't have only one day to walk and bike. We have all the month because sometimes it's complicated have a date that everybody can to participate in the celebration. So for this reason, we decided have October like our Welcome Day to School Day. No, so. After that point, we support the organizers by working with parents through workshops. The next, please. Also, we work with children and make some activities like in the imagine. We used to make some college connecting maps and other activities. The next, please. Also, we prepare the visual aid material with children, and we celebrate. The next, please. We walk. The next. Or bike. The next, please. So here are some other examples of previous celebrations, like in Mexico City, Puebla de Zaragoza, and André Cholula. The next, please. And now what happened in this year? We have a lot of celebrations. Just last week in Santa Catarina, in Nuevo León State, we had a participating school. The next, please. And for example, we have other celebrations. In this week, we are going to have the participation of Mazatlan. The next week could be participate Amozoc in Puebla, Apodaca. The next, please, por favor. Also, San Andrés Cholula, Monterrey, San Nicolás de los Garza, and we have the opportunity to make some celebrations on November. For this reason, Monterrey is going to participate. Then next, please. And some others that are in working process. For example, in Mexico City, we are going to work with Iztapalapa, and also Mérida is working in the organization of these events. And in Costa Rica, we are going to have for second time the celebration. And yes, this is all for us. This is a Walk and Road to School Day in Mexico and Costa Rica. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you for that. It was really kind of exciting to see how kind of excited the children were, and kind of great to see them there, as Janine says. Any has anyone got a quick question for Berenice before we close out?
I don't have questions.
Fantastic. Well, just to, before I pass back over to Nick, I'd like to thank Nancy. I'd like to thank all the other speakers for such kind of interesting and exciting presentations. It's great to see the enthusiasm that's behind Walking to School in so many parts of the globe. I think the one thing that really jumps out at me is how many of the challenges we're all experiencing are kind of the same. We're all looking at the same kind of problems, and we're all kind of dealing with them in very similar ways. But it's great to see innovation. It's great to have events like this to share best practice and work out how we can work better together in the future. Nancy, do you have anything to add?
Well, Stephen, I had very similar thoughts, but on maybe a little more of the warm and fuzzy side, because I just found today to be very inspiring. I think it's exciting to hear from these speakers and just think about our audience and the fact that there are people working around the globe on this shared commitment to children and children being able to get to school safely, something that is an experience that children around the world have and that all of us adults need to make better for them. I also really appreciate how much of the conversation today was around creating a supportive, a built environment for children to be able to walk and bike, and how well that complements the encouragement and the behavior change strategies, and just a real recognition that we need both of those pieces in addition to other major strategies. And of course, I share Stephen's thank you to each of our presenters today as well for sharing your expertise and experience. And thank you also to our participants in the audience for your curiosity and interest. I know that there was a question here about sharing contact information from the presenters. Nick or Stephen, what's the best way for us to do that?
I think, Nick, why don't you send an email afterwards to all the speakers just to check everyone's happy with that, and then we can share those afterwards if people are comfortable with that.
Yeah, absolutely. The video will be published on YouTube for people to watch back as well. I know a couple of speakers put contact details on there, but we will do that and send a follow-up to everyone who's participated as well. I think we have about 40 or so people who registered but want to watch it later as well. So there's certainly lots of interest in catching up with what's happened today.
Great. So I'm just going to ask Nick and Janine to make some kind of closing comments on behalf of Modeshift. But before I do, I'd like to thank kind of Modeshift and TravelWise for organising such a brilliant event this afternoon. It was a delight, as always, to partner with you on this, and look forward to future collaborations in future.
Oh, thanks, Stephen, and thank you to everyone, particularly those of you presenting and waiting for the slides to advance. I promise I was clicking every time you asked, frantically hoping it was updating, but it was. I think we had a bit of a delay down the line, but might have been the different time zones that the slides were trying to cross over. But yeah, your participation's been massively appreciated. I think often in sustainable and active travel fields, we feel that we're lone voices in our own local authorities and lone areas fighting against the big car lobbies who are getting their messages out, and that people don't like low traffic neighbourhoods or school streets. But there's real strong evidence that there's lots of people that do support this work here in the UK, but hearing that it's happening around the world as well is really, really inspiring. And Modeshift is all about best practice sharing, networking, showing that these things are possible. So it's awesome to have these examples from across the world as well. And I've seen lots of chats going on of how positive people are finding this. For those of you that weren't on the call just right at the start, I think there's some appetite that this may become an annual event as well. So hopefully we'll all get together again in International Walk to School Month next year and see what's happened and perhaps add some other people and other participants in as well. Just to finish off, a quick plug for what's coming up next for Modeshift. If I just go back to the slides again quickly. So this week is TravelWise Week. For those of you that are in the UK, this is part of European Mobility Week. We got permission to delay by a month because it usually takes place 16th to 22nd of September. But as we were in a national period of mourning at the time, we're delayed. So that's taking part this month, and there's a link in the slides there for if you want to take part in that. There are toolkits for schools and businesses to do car-free days and various other activities in there. For information, it's the National Modeshift, the Team Modeshift National Sustainable Travel Awards in 2 weeks' time. So you can read more about those on our website, and you'll see the awards winners announced on that evening, which is taking place very soon. Also part of that, we have our national convention as well. Tickets are still available. If you're here in the UK, you'll have heard that national rail strikes have been announced for the first day of the convention today. We are still going ahead, so please do feel free to come along, use the journey plan or our website to work out how to get there. And then 16th of March, we have our National TravelWise Conference as well, which will have a bit more of a business and community focus, and bookings for that will be opening next month. Otherwise, to keep up to date with the next lot of webinars, next lot of events, regional meetings that are coming up in January, February as well. And of course, our National School Travel Awards event, which is happening tomorrow in London. Please do jump on our social media channels, onto our website, and you'll see the very latest news on there. Otherwise, that's it from us. Contact details are on screen for any follow-up questions or anything else you want to check out. But otherwise, thank you for joining us from all different parts of the world. Enjoy the rest of your day for those of you in the USA, or good night to those of you sorry, I'm losing my words already, from Vietnam. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you all again soon.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah,
thank you.
Marvelous.
Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely wonderful.
Bye-bye.
And we finished on time. So yes, just a thank you to all of you. Lovely to see you.